Hello everyone, hey love lovers. So this is about the eighth house. We need to talk about the eighth house because it relates to relationships as well, and it plays a huge role in molding the relationships or building them. And of course, this is Mita. It's Mita speaking, your astrology journalist, because I break the news before the news happen, and Mercury is gonna go retrograde. Like tomorrow, it's gonna go actually stationary and then go, formally retrograde on the 19th. But happy about that, expecting that, excited for that. And because when Mercury goes retrograde, we can do a whole lot of stuff that we have not done. We've put aside. As I said last year in one of my videos, that when all planets go retrograde, we get to renew or restructure our things, our activities that are obviously reflected through that planet. And I had also said last year that those who already have retrograde planets in their natal charts, they get to have an easy life because for them it is normal. It becomes their normalcy, and they get to excel because they are at home, so to speak. I said this already last year. So now Mercury going retrograde again, as it always does, like 4 times a year. We're going to, have to reflect on our previous communications, previously released projects, friendships, having, old friends coming back. That's interesting. And obviously when it comes to relationships, old communications coming back, and things that need to be said, they must come now and be placed on the table so that people can discuss. And we must remember that I made an extensive research and I published that paper. I actually also published it on the academic platform because it was from an academic point of research when it comes to retrograde Mercury. Because I had a lot of data that I used, and I followed a lot of well-known relationships for over a span of time, and I discovered in my research that, or in my study, that when Mercury goes retrograde, there is a spike in domestic abuse. We hear a lot of cases, of domestic abuse, partners getting unalived, and some partners getting arrested over these things. So we must watch out for that part, because I studied it, and from both astrology and from an academic point of view, from a scholar point of view, and the research and my data really confirmed that when it comes to this time, these are the sensitive periods for such topics, particularly when it comes to relationships, right? But speaking about the 8th house, I'm just interested in it because I was actually doing a Synastry analysis of Tiger Woods, and I'm not going to post it today. I mean, I always do these things for analysis, so some of the Synastry analysis that I do, I don't post them because they just for study. So I was doing it, and then I saw something interesting in his 8th house, and I was like, actually, let me talk about the 8th house today, because many times, okay, let me just define it as we all know it, right? The 8th house it represents the actual life of the relationship. So the relationships and the agreements of the relationships, they happen in the 7th house, and thereafter then we go straight into the 8th house. This is where that agreement gets fulfilled and gets all its benefits from the 8th house. But it also includes the in-laws, because the in-laws, they do form part of our marriage and relationships, right? But this also includes other scandals. It could be scandals through other people, scandals through secrecy, scandals through intimacy as well, because we must remember this is also the house of the bedroom, in terms of the wild side of the bedroom life. Now, when it comes to the bedroom life, of course, we know that the pure entanglement when it comes to the bedroom, we see it from the 12th house. What do we find in the 8th house in terms of the intimacy is actually the shocking stuff, or the wild stuff, or doing the things that are out of the norm, because this is also a house of abuse. So this is where you see people who have been abused. You see here in the 8th house, mostly it will show. And certain things, of course, that do happen in our lives and in our relationships, we also see it from the 8th house. Accidents, backstabbing, taking life of someone, all of these things, saving life as well. We must remember this, because this is also a house of first aid, of emergency. So it's not just a life of doom, it is also a life of renewal, because remember, it is a life of death and rebirth, meaning that something has to die before you see it get life, which is actually the same thing as in a relationship. When you arrive at the 7th house, which is something that I explained so nicely in my book, by the way, which you can download from my website for a fee. By the way, I explained all these houses very, very nicely in terms of relationships. So the 7th house is where you meet, and you meet your spouse, and you lose your singleness, being one person. And then when you get into the 8th house, you're coming into a new stage with somebody else. But the meeting point obviously has to be the 7th house. Now, what I wanted to talk about really is the planets that are sitting in the 8th house, because this is what triggered my curiosity today when I saw Tiger Woods' chart. When it comes to the planets that are sitting in the 8th house, they will behave differently depending on your ascendant. Because as much as Saturn is the character of the 8th house, and is supposed to give longevity and all of these things, because remember, the 8th house is also the indication of your lifespan. This is where you see it in the 8th house. And for many ascendants where there's Saturn here, you definitely are sure that the person is going to have a long life. It is easy to see, it's very simple to see. But if you place Mars here, as much as it is the character of the 8th house as well in terms of ruling it, like Scorpio, but if you place it, and for example, for a Taurus ascendant, or for a Capricorn ascendant, you're definitely not going to get beautiful results as it would provide for an Aries ascendant. So the planets that sit in your 8th house will determine the results based on your ascendant, 100% definitely, but also obviously as well based on the other planets that it's sitting with in this house. Aspects, they always matter. Degrees, as I always say, they matter, and they speak a whole lot of stuff. Now, when it comes to Chiron in the 8th house, this is where you can see wounding regardless of the ascendant. because in astrology we do have planets that will always give benefits, or will always give negatives regardless of your ascendant, because that's how they are. But then what changes, it becomes the rate or the scale of how that thing comes to you. For example, if you are we are talking about Jupiter. Is known as the benefic and all of that, all the nice things. But when it comes to Gemini, Taurus, like all these signs that it does not necessarily have friendly vibes with, it does give negative results. But then these negative results are not highly visible or highly felt, because at the same time it's like it bites and then it heals. It bites and then it heals, because it's all about getting the person to mature. All right, so when it comes to Chiron, though, as I said, because of the identity of Chiron is wounding. It is just wounding. It doesn't matter if it's wounding its friend, wounding its enemy. It is just wounding. It will wound. So when it comes to Chiron in the 8th house, regardless of is friendly to you or not, which is mostly friendly to Virgos, Geminis, all the mercurial planets, but then it will still wound. By nature, this is what it does. It's got a mouth of wounding. Now, this is where you will see that somebody has been either psychologically abused, because this is also the house of psychology, the 8th house. Or this person has been physically abused, because then when you talk about Aries, for example, in the 8th house, so that will mean this is a Virgo ascendant, and then you can see that this person had been physically abused in their life just by looking at Chiron in the 8th house. So yeah, that's what I really wanted to talk about, because I got triggered by seeing his chart and I'm like, I need to talk about it. But then his chart is so special when it comes to the 8th house, because there are other things that are in his 8th house, so it would need to be read differently, more than just looking at the Chiron. It would need to be read differently, because he's got also the Ketu, which brings a whole new meaning in his 8th house. So yeah, I will chat to you soon. Thank you, Abby, and ciao.